Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily. We are now to poem number 22, All These My Banners Be. We are studying, of course, together the 1,775 poems of the Johnson edition of all of the poems of Emily Dickinson. I love this little poem, and I'm going to try and argue that Emily looks at her garden the way most people would think about some sacred space. A chancel will be the word, but it's like a church, if you will. Now, our assumption is that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you have experienced the intro lecture, and I'm hopeful that you've just finished poem 21 with us, We Lose. The background information here, well, there's much to be said of Emily's favorite St. Paul chapter, 1 Corinthians 15. And to read this poem well, we won't do it now, but it would be of advantage for you to sit down and read 1 Corinthians 15, especially the we too shall be changed in a moment. That idea of the way in which flowers are somehow a representation of the whole notion of transformation and regeneration. Let's enjoy the poem. All these my banners be, I sow my pageantry. In May, it rises train by train, then sleeps in state again. My chancel all the plain today. To lose, if one can find again. To miss, if one shall meet. The burglar cannot rob then, the broker cannot cheat. So build the hillocks gaily, thou little spade of mine, leaving nooks for daisy and for columbine. You and I the secret of the crocus know, let us chant it softly, there is no more snow. To him who keeps an orchid's heart, the swamps are pink with June. Now, I think there's a whole lot going on in this poem, and we'll try to point it out as we annotate now. First of all these my banners be will take us to poem 53. It's the only other use of banners in her poetry, taken from men this morning, carried by men today, met by the gods with banners who marshaled her away. The idea of banners will have both a militaristic bent, but as well, I think, a sacred religious bent as well, especially because chancel is going to be referenced. Pageantry, I sow my pageantry. In other words, in the spring I plant my seeds, right, and the pageantry of it all. And of course it's done in May. In the spring, this poem's point of reference is probably somewhere right in the middle of June, in the middle of summer, if you will. It rises train by train, in other words, the growth, the process of the growth, or the cycles, right? Then sleeps in state again. In other words, there's a certain understanding of the rise and fall of the seasons, right? My chancel, that area close adjacent to the altar in a church, all the plain today. Notice train, plain, and the rhyming that's going on. In other words, I have the complete panoply, the pageantry, right in front of me, in the middle of the summer. Then, to lose, and that takes us obviously back to poem 21, the previous poem about losing and winning. To lose, if one can find again. To miss, if one shall meet. In other words, the idea of the cyclical, the promise of the predictability of the seasons, right? The burglar cannot rob then. In other words, a burglar cannot take away from us the expectation of the spring. The broker cannot cheat. This will obviously take us to Mary Shelley's Ode to the West Wind, if winter come, can spring be far behind, no doubt. I think that's the poem that's actually standing in much ways behind this poem. So, build the hillocks gaily. The idea of I'm going to plant with joy, expectation. Thou little spade of mine, right now we're planting. Leaving nooks for daisies. In poem 46, we're going to hear it by Daisy, called from hillside. She loves daisies. And for columbine, this is the only use of the word columbine in all of her poetry. You and I, the secret. Now, she could be speaking directly to the flowers. Some have argued she's speaking directly to you in the same way that Walt Whitman loves to do that in Brooklyn Ferry, Crossing Brooklyn Ferry. We talked about that in our Talks with Walt series. You and I, the secret. Now, this is an important word for her, secret. I think in some ways this is the central word of this poem. In poem 191, we'll see this again. The skies can't keep their secret. For Emily, there always seems to be this element in her poetry of, hey, psst, come here for a second, let me tell you this, right? You and I, the secret of the crocus know. In poem 142, she'll say, the crocus stirs her lids. I love that imagery, and we'll come back to that again. You and I, the secret of the crocus know, let us chant it softly. And from chancel now we're to chanting, right? There is no more snow. Now this can either be the anticipation of their spring and there being no more snow, right? The celebration that snow is now gone. And then the last two lines is a couplet, to him who keeps an orcus heart. That is to say, this, and I love her use of this. In poem 64, we're going to play a similar game where she'll say it this way. The orcus binds her feather on, for her, O lover, dawned the sun, revisiting the bog. There it's bog, here it will be swamp. In other words, you get all the snow melts and it creates kind of a swampy area, and out of that swampy area will produce the flowers. The swamps are pink with June. You'll remember from poem 6, the woods are pink. Well, what is the point here in a brilliant little poem like this? Well, I think there's always the promise of spring. That idea that there's always reason for optimism, even in the middle of the nastiest of winters. We always are looking for the spring. Her key word here, chancel, I think, the garden is sacred. The garden is that place, and of course Voltaire's Candide comes to mind. We must cultivate our own gardens, and certainly at 3A that comes to mind. Shelley's Ode to the West Wind, as we said, comes to mind. If winter come, can spring be far behind? At 3B, how are we going to own a poem like this? Well, I sometimes like to ask this question for you. What gets you through the winter, the predictability of spring, and does that help you? I'm hopeful that maybe reading Emily will help you get through the winter as well. Thank you.